Alien, Alien, Alien. It's a curious franchise in some ways. Ridley Scott's classic and James Cameron's sequel are, in my opinion, two of the finest films ever made. But the franchise is still considered active even today, even though that means it hasn't had a top-notch AAA movie release since 1986. 1992's Alien 3 is not without its charms, but it irked many fans in the first 10 minutes by killing Newt off-screen, thereby rendering the entire final act of Aliens pointless, and then it failed to add anything to the series we hadn't seen before and executed much better. Again, Alien Resurrection in 1997 was mildly entertaining at the time, but it won't be remembered as a classic. It was also absolutely dripping in that 90s self-aware irony that pretty much defined sci-fi and horror movies of the decade. And the Alien vs Predator films of the mid-noughties were a poor execution of what was already a pretty bad idea to begin with, managing to cheapen two franchises in one fell swoop. So fast forward to 2012, and fans were intrigued at the news Ridley Scott would be returning after more than 30 years to direct a prequel that would explore the origins of the titular creature and its relationship to the series' great unanswered mystery. The identity of the dead pilot of the derelict spacecraft where the crew of the Nostromo picked up their unwanted passenger in the first film. This plan was as ambitious as it was risky. If you're going to offer up an explanation for something fans have been speculating about for over 3 decades, you'd better have something pretty convincing in mind, or you're liable to leave a lot of people disappointed, especially if you're answering a question that didn't really need answering in the first place. So how did they do? Well, Prometheus begins on a barren and desolate planet. A giant humanoid alien drinks an unpleasant-looking concoction and promptly disintegrates, dispersing his DNA throughout the planet's budding ecosystem. A few tens of thousands of years later, Dr. Elizabeth Shaw and her partner Charles Holloway are digging around on the Isle of Skye off the coast of Scotland when they discover a set of cave paintings. As it turns out, one of many such paintings scattered throughout the globe, all depicting the same thing: a giant humanoid figure gesturing towards a star cluster. I think you can see where this is going. Shaw and Holloway join the dots and figure out these aliens, who they dub engineers, shaped the evolution of life on our planet and have been visiting us ever since, inviting us to join them at their home in the stars when our technology becomes sufficiently advanced. It's not a particularly original concept nowadays. We've seen this idea played out in numerous works of science fiction over the years, going right back to Arthur C. Clarke's 2001 A Space Odyssey. Heck, even L. Ron Hubbard managed to make a cash-grabbing pseudo-religion out of the idea that humans are the descendants of ancient alien visitors. Hail Xenu! But anyway, it's the year 2093, and humans have developed interstellar space travel. So it seems like a good idea to accept the invitation and head out to meet our makers. But spaceships are expensive, so their mission is funded by wealthy but elderly entrepreneur and inventor Peter Wayland, played by Guy Pearce. Let's just hope he's motivated by scientific curiosity and isn't using the mission to pursue his own agenda, shall we? Anyway, aboard Wayland's ship, the Prometheus, Shaw, Holloway and the assembled band of experts and misfits that Wayland conned into joining this voyage of the damned are in hypersleep, blissfully unaware of the passage of time. Meanwhile, the ship is tended to by the sentient android David, played by Michael Fassbender. David was constructed by Wayland, who thinks of the android as a kind of de facto son. Once they reach their destination, the crew are revived, and Shaw and Holloway are quickly proved right. This world was indeed some kind of outpost of an ancient civilization who we learn are genetically virtually identical to humans. But they've all been dead for thousands of years. What could possibly have gone wrong? Well, it seems these beings weren't too pleased with how their creation turned out, and at some point around 2,000 years ago, they decided to destroy us with a genetically engineered bioweapon that somehow got out and killed them before they could deploy it. Lucky us, eh? But one of them managed to survive in suspended animation, so Wayland reveals himself and the reason he funded the mission. He knows he's reached the end of his life, and he's not too happy about it. He hopes the civilization that created humans know how to overcome our greatest limitation, our short lifespan. I don't know if it was intentional, but there's an interesting parallel here with Ridley Scott's other classic work, Blade Runner, where the replicant Roy Batty confronts his human creator Eldon Tyrell demanding an extension to his predetermined 4-year service life. But anyway, David faithfully wakes the sleeping engineer and pops the question. But after a 2,000-year nap, the last thing you want to see is Guy Pearce covered in latex old man makeup begging you to make him immortal. So he throws a temper tantrum and kills Wayland, rips David's head off, and sets off in his spaceship to complete his original mission, the destruction of all life on Earth. And would you look at that? His ship is identical to the one from Alien, where Dallas, Kane and Lambert discovered the egg chamber in the first film. And his spacesuit makes him look sort of, almost, a little bit like the giant alien corpse they found there. Prometheus is a mixed bag. I said at the start of this video that any origin story for the derelict and its pilot would have to be pretty convincing if you expect fans to buy into it. I don't know about you, but my brain has a pretty hard time accepting that this thing is actually one of these guys wearing one of these exoskeletal suits. When I re-watch Alien, as I often do, I don't think, oh look, an engineer from Prometheus. I don't believe for 1 second that Ridley Scott or Dan O'Bannon had anything remotely like this in mind back in 1979 when they crafted this scene, and as such, I struggle to accept this explanation as canon. On the other hand, this film is reasonably well crafted in a technical sense. It looks fantastic, has an eerily ominous musical score that suits the narrative, and Michael Fassbender and Noomi Rapace put in decent acting performances as David and Dr. Shaw. There are 1 or 2 rather dubious casting choices though, like Idris Elba doing a questionable American accent as the ship's captain and Guy Pearce as Wayland. Why did they cast a then 45-year-old actor and cover him in makeup to make him look like an old man? It's almost like they were planning to film flashback scenes minus the makeup. That did eventually happen for about 5 minutes in the beginning of the sequel Alien Covenant, but as far as this film goes it seems like a poor decision. It's also worth noting that Prometheus almost entirely does away with the horror elements of the original Alien movies. Alien never tried to be a hard science fiction film. It was essentially a haunted house story in space, and I do accept that there are only so many ways you can tell a story about a largely unseen monster picking off the cast one by one. If you want to continue the franchise, you do need to advance the narrative in some way, and that's what this film set out to do, even if its explanations don't really land. On balance, I'd describe Prometheus as the kind of film that aims high and misses. It poses all these grand philosophical questions about the nature of existence and the compatibility between science and faith, but when it realises the writers don't really have the answers, the final act degrades into a series of rather mediocre action sequences that feel out of place given the ambitious nature of the first 90 minutes. But still, I don't hate this film. It's far from the worst entry in the Alien franchise. I'd take it over any of the Alien vs Predator nonsense, and I'd say it at least gives Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection a run for their money. It's also far superior to its own sequel, Alien Covenant, which somehow manages to be even more pretentious and does far more damage to the franchise with its half-baked explanation for how the original alien creature came into being. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and until next time, this is Psychoanacritic, last survivor of the Nostromo, signing off.